everyone, and welcome back to Maya's Reviews, a book podcast and blog where I review all types of novels. I'm Maya, and thank you for joining me for another episode today. So today is actually a bit different. I am not doing a review. Instead, I interviewed Carly Heath, the author of The Reckless Kind. So I am so excited for you all to hear our discussion about The Reckless Kind and all of the wonderful answers Carly Heath provided to my questions. Just a quick background on the novel. The Reckless Kind was published by Soho Teen on November 2nd, 2021. It is a YA historical fiction LGBTQ novel and is 336 pages long. There are some content warnings for The Reckless Kind by Carly Heath. A scene of violence, bodily harm, suicidal ideation, mention of child abuse, and alcoholism are all present in this novel, so please educate yourself on the content warnings before reading this novel. And let's get right into the interview. I'm so excited.
Hello,
Hi.
Maya.
Hi, it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Oh, no problem. It was really nice of you to reach out. I was very excited. Your book has been on my TBR, so I've been keeping my eye on that. So it was really exciting. So for those who haven't read your book or don't know about your novel, can you tell them about The Reckless Kind?
Yeah, The Reckless Kind is about three misfit teens in 1904 Norway, and they have to they pretty much defy the expectations of their rural village in every possible way. They leave their homes, they leave their families, and they go to live in a mountain cabin above town. And in order to maintain their way of life, they have to defeat the town patriarch in the region's annual winter horse race. So they have to train a wild filly for the horse race, and they face a lot of opposition along the way from people who are very judgmental of them and how they're choosing to be different.
What is your favorite aspect of your novel?
I love that it's a book that features a number of diverse characters, characters with multiple disabilities, because just like in real life, people have disabilities. People have, in some cases, multiple disabilities. So I felt like it's important in fiction to have more representation, because when you read a lot of books and you watch a lot of movies, there tends to be a lot of characters that are fully abled, that tend to be hetero, cis, usually even white, and so it's a very kind of homogenous representation that you see in media. And I would like to bring a little bit more diversity to the representation. I'd like to reflect the world as it really is, which in some cases, in a lot of cases, at least for like everyone I know and all my friends, disability is a part of life, and it shouldn't be something that's thought of as taboo or something that's not spoken about. Disability should be acknowledged, and it should just be regarded as, oh, that's part of someone's identity, and it doesn't have to serve the plot, or it doesn't have to be something that someone overcomes. It's just a part of a character's life.
I think that's really great, especially since I've noticed with young adult fiction recently too, there's been more of a push for diversity. And I think that's really, really awesome, especially for younger readers who haven't seen that in their novels and in their media. So I think that's really amazing that you put that in your novel. What was the inspiration behind your book?
So I've always loved Scandinavia, and like even in high school and middle school, like my favorite I'm a big horse girl. So like my favorite horses have always been the Norwegian fjord ponies, which are these really cute, round, fuzzy ponies, and they're sort of butterscotch colored, and they have like this mane that's kind of striped and cut short, and they're so cute. And like you've seen them in the movie Frozen, the main horse in that movie. So I've always wanted to do a book with Norwegian fjord ponies and in Scandinavia, just because I feel like it's such a cool setting. And then I read this book. It's a really old book. It's like a classic called Kristin Lavransdatter, which was written by Sigrid Undset, and she won the Nobel Prize in Literature for it. And the writing of the book is so great. And like the setting and the characters is so rich. And there's so much to love about it. But the theme and the message, as far as what I got from it when I read it, was basically, if you defy your parents, you will suffer and your life will be miserable, basically. And so I hate that message. And that's not something that teens need to be hearing. So my book kind of has a lot of the things that I love about Kristin Lavransdatter, like the setting, like the passion and all of that. But it does have the theme that's much more feminist, which is it's important to follow your heart and do what you feel is right. And sometimes people will push back against you. Sometimes your parents will tell you you're wrong, but it's really important to continue on the path that you feel is right, that feels right for you, and to connect with people who support you.
I think that's really awesome. Like that, I need to read your book as soon as possible.
Oh, thank you.
What characters in The Reckless Kind do you most relate to?
Well, it's a dual point of view between Erland and Asta. And I like those two characters really, like, they're both kind of a part of me. And I really strongly identify with both of them. I can hear their voices in my head, and I can definitely relate to Erland's anxiousness and his anxiety and his constant worry and dread about things. And then Asta, she's not like anxious the way that Erland is. She's more like very intuitive about what's going on in other people, and she's also very caring. And she's very she has a very critical way of looking at the world, where she can kind of see what people's biases are and what people's maybe areas of ignorance are. And she's very aware of that. And so I really identify with both characters a lot. I also really identify with Gunnar, who doesn't have a point of view, who I would love to someday write a book that's like all his point of view, because he's such an interesting character, where he's very, he has a lot of feelings, but he tends to keep them very contained because he doesn't want to show weakness or vulnerability. And I love writing him as a character, and I love showing the way that he copes with some really serious issues. He's dealing with chronic pain, from an injury. He's dealing with a lot of guilt that he feels over his boyfriend Erland, who has basically like left his family because he loves Gunnar so much. And Gunnar has a lot of guilt about that. And so in some ways, Gunnar doesn't have as much in common with me, but like I really relate to him and I understand him a lot. So I would really love to write a book that's like just him. But he does come off the page when you're reading it as a very dynamic character.
That's awesome, because I always think, when authors are writing their books, you tend to put things in your books that you experience in real life, or reflect yourself in characters. So it's really awesome that you relate to so many in your novel.
Yeah, definitely. They all have like things like Asta's hard of hearing. I'm hard of hearing as well. Gunnar like had this really serious arm injury, and I broke my arm when I was in high school, and in like a really serious way where it was like flopping backwards. And then he also deals with a broken back, and I have a broken back. So like there's like lots of things that are like things I've experienced that the characters have.
Interested in starting a podcast? I bet you haven't heard of Anchor, an app and site that makes it super easy to create your own. Not only is it free, but Anchor also allows you to make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Anchor distributes your podcast for you to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more platforms. Anchor has creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone and computer. It's everything you need all in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's ANCHOR.fm to get started today. When did you know that you wanted to pursue writing?
I think I've always been really interested in writing and really all kinds of art. I've always been a drawer. I've always been like coming up with stories. In first grade, I had a teacher who every day for homework, she'd have us like bring in a story, like write a 1-page story and bring it in, and then like tell it to the class. So like I kind of had a lot of familiarity with writing stories all the way back into first grade. In college, I wanted to be a filmmaker and I made films. But the thing about like filmmaking is you really have no control over what the finished product looks like, because you spend a lot of time writing a script and then actors perform it, and then the camera crew creates it, and then like you direct it and you give your best effort to make it how you want it to look. But basically, because so many people are involved, it's always going to turn out different than what you intended. Whereas with a book, you have like 100% complete control over what it is and what the final outcome is. And you can really, and it doesn't cost any money to write. Basically, that's what's really cool. Like with filmmaking, it was so expensive. The equipment, the costumes, the editing, like all of that, so expensive if you want to make it good. But with a book, it's just Microsoft Word and your computer. And so I could really spend like years working on it, perfecting it, making it like exactly what I wanted it to be. And I love that. And a book, you know, once you write a book, it's done and it can be experienced as a work of art. Whereas with film, you write a screenplay and it's not really a finished work of art until someone makes it into a film. So yeah, that's what kind of after college, I really decided that instead of filmmaking, writing was what I wanted to do.
That's really awesome that you started as, you know, so young into the arts and especially writing. I know when I was younger, I would always write stuff and then never finish it. It would be the start of something and never.
Yeah, I did a lot of that. Like I wrote a lot of like first couple of pages of, or even like I had a novel that I worked on before this one that I think I wrote like 200 pages on it, and then I just couldn't finish it. You know,
you'd like write a chapter and you're like,
yeah.
I would always do that.
That's part of learning, though.
Anything. Yeah.
Yeah. Eventually, you'll write something and you'll finish it.
For you, what is the hardest part of the writing process?
I have trouble with villains, honestly, writing villains, because I have a hard time understanding why someone would be terrible. Like I'm a hardcore Libra, so like I'm like, like the energy that it takes to be mean or like get in someone's way. I don't understand how people have that energy to be terrible. So, because I'm like, my default is I'm just going to be nice and it's easy that way. So yeah, writing villains is really hard. And that's probably like the thing that I struggle with most. And then when I write them, I have this fear that it doesn't sound realistic. And then you meet people in real life who are like real life terrible people, and you're like, oh wow, it is realistic. There are people like that. But yeah, when you're writing it, you're like, really, would someone do this? Yeah, it's hard to kind of get into that side of human psychology.
I totally get that, because I would not know how to write someone evil, or, you know, it's just,
I know.
if it's not your natural instinct, I'm sure that's hard to get into that headspace of being such a horrible person.
Exactly. Oh, what's your sign, by the way?
Oh, I'm a Capricorn. So
okay, awesome. Well, usually it's funny because I know a couple Capricorn writers and they're actually really good at writing villains. But they all but you're a nice Capricorn. That's nice.
Thank you. What is your favorite part of writing?
I love writing descriptions of like the settings and like the clothes, and like the way that a space looks, and like the world and all of that, like the pretty details. I love writing all of that. And like the kissing scenes and like the emotional, like romantic scenes, I like writing those. And it's always really fun to get really detailed on what things look like, but you can get too detailed and then you can spend like pages just describing what things look like, and that can slow things down a whole lot. So yeah, that's really fun, but it does get really hard when you're describing emotions that happen, like when someone, like there's always that line that like something happens and then the character is like, you know, the blood drained from their face or their heart started pounding. Like there's only so many times you can write someone their heart started pounding. They broke out into a cold sweat. And that, like those sorts of emotions, it's like coming up with the different ways to explain on the page that emotion without just saying the same thing over and over again. That's really hard.
Yeah. What advice do you have for aspiring authors?
I would say, one, know that it's going to take a long time, because I have a YouTube channel as well, and I've interviewed tons of different authors, and pretty much universally, everyone I interviewed, they said it took 10 years from when they started writing to when the book finally got published. And they didn't necessarily spend the 10 years like writing the book. It's like they spent so much time revising, and then like the querying process to get an agent, and then like going out on sub to editors. So like the whole process takes a long time. So if you go into it knowing it's going to take a long time, then hopefully you won't have that need to rush. Because I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, I have to get this finished so that I can get this submitted to agents before the end of the year. And the thing is, it kind of is, people put things out there too early. People send things to agents too early when it's not quite ready yet. And then that sets you back. So just spend as much time as you can revising your work, getting a lot of feedback from a lot of different people. And then make sure, you know, and be really patient. That's the most important thing too. Like, be really patient. Don't feel like you have to get the thing written in a month and then sent out the next month, because you really have to put in the time to perfect it and revise it in order to get an agent's attention and then go out on sub.
Yeah. I mean, I've always assumed the writing process is very long, because coming up with characters and setting and your plot, that there's so much that goes into a book. And it's crazy to me that people are able to finish books and make them so amazing. But then publishing too is, if you look into that, like I've looked into it, and it's very confusing to me. So I'm sure that takes forever. It must take a long time.
A good podcast to listen to, which kind of goes over the whole publishing industry, like, and it explains things really precisely, is this podcast called Track Changes, which is it's just an 8-part podcast, and it just goes step by step through the publishing industry, and it's really breaks things down super easy. And then also, if anyone is like confused or like, I don't know how to begin, Pitch Wars is something that I did. I didn't get into Pitch Wars, but in 2016, I was entering it, and I was connecting with everyone who is like a Pitch Wars hopeful. And they have groups on like Facebook and Twitter. And so I connected with everyone who is kind of involved in Pitch Wars. And that was a great place to get feedback and feedback on my writing. And then I would read their book, and they would read mine, and we would swap pages and give each other feedback. And that was really great. And then if you are lucky enough to actually get accepted into Pitch Wars, you'll get a mentor who will then guide you through the process of querying to get an agent. And so that is really helpful. I also recommend Alexa Dunn's YouTube channel because she also really explains the querying process and the whole publishing industry really well.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you. It's
no problem.
To me. And I can't wait to read your book. It sounds amazing, and your characters sound amazing. I'm really looking forward to the diversity that you've put in your novel. So
thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on and reaching out. I had a lot of fun talking to you. So
thank you. Oh, and if anyone's listening, I have, you can reach me on Twitter at Carly L. Heath, and my website is Carly Heath Author, and I'm on TikTok at Carly Lynn Heath. That's Lyn Heath. And then I'm on Instagram at Carly Lynn Heath as well.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Have a good rest of your day, Maya. Thank you.
You too. And that is the end of my interview of Carly Heath. So thank you so much for listening. If you haven't checked out The Reckless Kind by Carly Heath, make sure you go do that, and make sure you follow them on all of their social media and check out their site. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please check out my blog, Maya's Reviews, at mayagreviews.wordpress.com. You can also find me at Maya the Bookworm on Twitter, Goodreads, BookBub, and Book Sirens. I'm also on Tumblr at Maya Reviews. If you want me to review your book or want to come on the podcast to discuss a novel, maybe even just reach out to me, you can email me at mayagbookreviews@gmail.com. I do ask that if you are reaching out in regards to a review request, interview, collab, blog tour, or anything publicity related, that you check out my publicity request page on my blog first and then email me. Thank you so much for listening, and happy reading. And thank you so much to Carly Heath for coming on the podcast. I really apologize if I pronounced her name wrong like 15 times. But thank you so much, and I hope all of you have an amazing day.